But the reason I'm emotional is because, what UCD means to me and what UCD means to all of us. It's an opportunity for us to learn how to explore the world that we live in. It's an opportunity for us to develop our presentation skills so that we can get up and share our knowledge with other people. I'm a criminologist by trade, and what that means is that I study the worst that human beings are capable of. But on the flip side of that, I think it's equally important to study the best that human beings are capable of. Y'all have probably noticed that we live in a world that has quite a few problems, a lot of reasons for us to be pessimistic. And so this is an opportunity for us to share something optimistic with one another, to look more deeply into the things about our lives that give us inspiration and meaning. And part of the reason I'm so emotional about this is because the people that you see on the stage here today, they're my heroes. And hopefully you'll see from their story that all it takes to make a positive difference in the world is the willingness to put yourself out there and a good heart, a desire to make the world a better. I know that sounds cliche, but the willingness to make the world a better place. And so I'm truly hoping that through our discussion today with our delightful panelists, that you will also be inspired to see that all it really takes to fight against the negativity and the things in our world that are truly terrifying and upsetting. I think that it's a really good lesson for all of us to know that it starts with one person and a desire for us to make a positive and profound difference in the world. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and start our panel. We have with us today, thank y'all for being friends and supporting me. It's so hard being up here talking about this stuff sometimes. But we have Brad, Faye, and Kelsey Dickerson, and as we're going to see in a few minutes here, they have literally kind of put their money where their mouth is, and they have made tremendous sacrifices to make the world a better place and to get forth the message based on our theme of UCD this year of find your own inner superhero. And I think they're a perfect living example of people who are not willing to stay on the sidelines idly by and let bad things happen. I think they're a perfect example of people who are willing to do whatever it takes to make a profound positive difference in the world. So thank y'all for coming to visit us, and hopefully y'all will enjoy the presentation as much as I enjoy hanging out with some really good friends of mine. So you guys have a website. It's called superherofaces.com, which I like to talk a little bit about, the inspiration behind that and what you're trying to accomplish through your work.
Yeah, so it basically started, I'm a big geek, and whenever I get into something at all, I just go all in, and I'm just incredibly into it. It could be, if it's sports, if it's Star Wars, if it's comic books, whatever I'm into at a particular moment, I'm the person who does all the research on, what is the history of this? I can't just enjoy something. I have to know, the ins and the outs and what makes it work. And eventually that just got me thinking about, what makes me a geek in general. Why is it that I gravitate towards this? Why do some people gravitate towards that? And in time I started to just, research that and see why do some people like some superheroes over other superheroes? And a friend of mine recommended Joseph Campbell's A Hero with a Thousand Faces. And I'll never forget, when he recommended it, he said it might be a little too scholarly for you. So I took that as a backhanded way of being I don't know if you're smart enough to understand the book. So I was I'll show you. So I read it and I was completely lost, and I was oh, he was right. How am I gonna tell him? But fortunately, something about it just really resonated with me, and I was okay, something still connects, despite the fact that I don't get it, something still resonates. And I realized the problem I was having is a lot of the stories that Joseph Campbell was referencing in the book were myths that I hadn't heard since I was really young, or myth stories that I had never heard at all, like Gilgamesh and all these now that, are considered classic. Oh, everyone knows that story. I didn't. So I went back and started researching all these myths that he was referencing. And while doing so, I started seeing the parallels between, I'm oh, so he's basically like Batman, or, okay, so this demigod is basically Superman, half, human. And so I just started making all these connections. And as time went on and I started getting more and more into it, I just started seeing the parallels, not only between these fictional stories, but how we kind of mirror these stories. And when, we have a difficult task in our lives and we have to overcome it, and we can just see how their trials are kind of similar to ours. And right around that time, Kelsey and our friend Arvin became a three-man band and started to say, well, let's talk to people at comic conventions. Let's ask people, well, why do you like Superman? Or why are you dressed up as Batman as opposed to this other superhero? And right off the bat, we started getting much more deep answers than like we ever could have fathomed. I mean, we're going up to people with a camera, asking them to speak on camera. They don't know what's going on. We didn't expect people to be so open with us. And one of the ones that I remember most was we talked to Anakin Skywalker in Tucson, and he, literally went up to him just with the intent of, why do you like Anakin? Like, what about Anakin Skywalker? And he said, I lost my mother when I was very young, and I saw the path that he kind of went down, and how he allowed it to be, his anger consumed him, and he wanted revenge against it. And I told myself, I'm going to do the opposite. So now what he does is he cosplays as Anakin and goes with other people dressed as Star Wars characters to visit children in hospitals. So it's just a really good example of how let alone a villain, like he allowed to inspire him to do something positive in his own life, and to see the connections of, okay, obviously fictional stories are a more grandiose and exaggerated version of what we go through, but he saw something that he connected with, and that, struck a chord with him, and he allowed it to make a positive influence in his life. And right at that moment, we kind of knew, like, okay, this is kind of bigger than we expected. And right around that time, I ended up getting laid off of the job I had worked for over 11 years. And it didn't get me down like I thought it would. Like, I'd always thought if ever that would happen, I would just be like a mess and I'd be a wreck. But instead of, I thought, okay, it's time to really put this to the test and see, if this hero's journey thing really works. Like, do I take this and make it into a positive? And that's when I said, okay, I'm going to be a few months without work. Let's maybe turn this into a documentary, and let's turn these interviews and see if we could do something bigger with it than what we went in thinking might initially be possible. And that's when Kelsey was like, let's do it, and did one of the bravest things I've ever seen. She quit her job. We worked together, and she said, you know what, I'm really not happy. Let's see where this takes us. And then that's how we kind of got started.
Yeah, definitely. So we had been working, I was approached by Brad and Arvin. This is kind of their brainchild, their baby, and they needed help for video stuff. And I was like, yeah, I want to expand my skill set. And it really was just that. It was me helping friends with something that they were super into. I had a little bit of knowledge about it, but nowhere near the knowledge that that Brad and Arvin had. And like Brad mentioned, right off the bat, we found that there was such deeper meaning in comic books and geek culture, and that people were really relating their stories to us in such a personal way. And we really just sat there and we were like, we have to tell this story. It goes so much deeper than, how did you make your cosplay costume today, or who are you dressed up as? There were so many different stories that we could tell. We could sit here all day and tell you all the stories about people who have truly inspired us, and they are the reason that we are here today, and that why we felt like we should do a documentary to really help spread love, understanding, and really try to bring everyone together.
Would y'all like to show a brief clip of some of the work that y'all been doing?
Yeah, so this is just the kind of clip when we first launched our website. We kind of, the thing that's really cool is we each kind of have our own different skill set that we kind of, bring to the table. Like Arvin is a web designer. He couldn't be here, so he asked that I refer to him as a web designer extraordinaire. I said, what do you want to be? What's your label? And he goes, make sure I'm known as a web designer extraordinaire. So I'm like, okay, done. Kelsey is great at just speaking with people and being much more comfortable in this kind of setting right now than I'm in. I'm usually the behind the camera person, but I am into geek culture, so it made it a lot easier if we're walking up to someone that's dressed up as some obscure character that was in Star Trek, the fourth Star Trek movie. I could kind of lean in and Kelsey be, all right, Kelsey, this is this guy's story. He ends up doing this and blah, blah, blah. And boom, she just picked up on it and was able to bring out the best in people and to really get extraordinary answers. And her ability to just be comfortable around people is, a key reason why they were comfortable opening up with us, which helped us get some of the responses we were able to get. But this is an example of just one of the videos we did for our website to kind of show this is what we want to let people know, that there's more to these stories than just entertainment. They can be more if you look into them a little deeper.
The fact that some people listen to me and I can write something that may affect somebody, it's a wonderful feeling. Wonderful.
In 1963, Stan Lee and Jack Kirby's X-Men universe was first introduced to us in the midst of the Civil Rights Movement. The X-Men universe opened up the door to have really tough conversations about the racial tension that was going on at the time. It also allowed the reader to put themselves in someone else's shoes and see the world through a different perspective.
Hey, you're one of them, ain't you? We don't want you lousy mutants around here!
Fictional universes work as a bridge for us to be able to have these conversations about moral issues that are going on in our own world. Another great example was, and still is, Star Trek.
It is obvious to the most simple-minded that Loki is of an inferior breed.
The obvious visual evidence, Commissioner, is that he is of the same breed as yourself.
You know, Star Trek, which part of its success was the fact that it could address social issues at a time when they were very much on people's minds, but people were not addressing them on TV, at least not to that degree.
You know, what I loved about Star Trek was that it really was about a unified group of different cultures working together for a common good. And, you know, the race really wasn't a issue. And Gene Roddenberry was very subversive about it because he brought in the whole race and diversity topic by bringing in different aliens.
Unlike in the X-Men, which showed us a world divided because of our differences, Star Trek showed us what we might be able to achieve if we're able to look past those racial divides. A utopian future.
Starfleet Command extends greetings to Commissioner Beale of the planet Charon.
Gene Roddenberry knew exactly what he was doing. It's filled with diversity, and it was so well done. And so it was. I was proud to be on it.
What are you smiling about, Captain?
Nothing, sir. I just think he's kind of hot. I think that the genre of sci-fi and the genres of fantasy absolutely open the door for these conversations in unique ways. Sometimes because it's easier to say, what happened to those alien beings is distant enough from what I think about my actual neighbor. I felt compassion for that, and then secretly am now questioning myself, and I want to have compassion in these other ways.
The wildcards itself, we have this whole class of people called jokers who are, the wildcard virus is the cause of all the superpowers in the world, but only 1 in 100 who contracts the virus becomes an ace with superpowers. For every ace, there are 10 jokers where they're mutated, but in an unfortunate way. They become crippled or deformed or ugly or grotesque in some manner, and they're shunned by society and considered unclean and potentially diseased. Well, the jokers are our metaphor, if you will, our symbol, for our stand-in for all of the marginalized groups of society that have suffered in our society, whether it's racial minorities or religious minorities or gay and lesbian people. You know, all of these people who, for one reason or another, at one point or other in history, have been declared outcasts. We're talking about a fictional world, but we wanted to reflect on the real world.
He's a mutant, a stinking mutant. He doesn't deserve to live on the same planet as normal, decent human beings.
Fiction can serve as a jumping-off point to talk about issues that may be hard to talk about when it affects people's real lives. I think race is a really good example of a topic that for some people, it's hard to have a real conversation without either getting defensive or angry or upset and having a productive conversation. And so sometimes talking about things, what we would call in psychology in displacement, kind of once removed, can keep personal emotions. It can help dampen them enough to have a productive conversation.
If people really in some way are influenced by anything I say, the one thing that I'm trying to say is we should all be good to each other.
As always, thank you so much for watching. For more Superhero Faces content, make sure you subscribe to us on YouTube, like us on Facebook, and follow us on Twitter. We'll see you there.
It's time we recognize that all mutants are potentially dangerous to mankind.
Get a life.
Way to go, Jubilee. So there's a story behind y'all being here. So how did y'all end up finding yourself in this position so that now you're not just kind of working behind the scenes to produce documentaries or to do your website, but how are y'all finding yourselves in front of this audience today talking about your work.
Yeah, so I mean, as far as meeting Dr. Atkinson, like the way that started was within probably a week of getting laid off, I was like, I don't know, I probably put way more pressure on myself. I remember everyone saying like, take some time to just relax. I'm like, no, I need to do something so I can look back one day and say like, this is the best thing that ever happened to me. Like, what can I do to kind of, start to transform this? And everyone was like, well, why don't you give it a couple of weeks? And I'm like, no, like, let me just start now. And I just started looking up online people whose work, I really respected and that I thought were just doing something amazing. And I'm like, these are the kind of things that we want to, bring to the forefront and maybe let people know about these things that wouldn't have the time like I did to just sit there and Google till 2 o'clock in the morning, like, are any teachers implementing, Spider-Man to their work? And unfortunately, with Dr. Atkinson, he had a familiarity with a lot of things we knew we wanted to talk about in the documentary in terms of the comic book code. He was familiar with Joseph Campbell's work and the fact that he was implementing Spider-Man into a criminal justice class. I mean, it just made perfect sense. So I reached out, and I don't know if I'm going to get a response. It might get ignored, so I'm like, I'll email him. And he said, I'm happy to help you. Let me know when you want to come out here. And I was like, oh, wow, I really am going to go there? I'm like, I'm dipping into my savings to, like, fly to Texas? Like, I don't even know him. Like, what if I get there? And he, it says, like, you know what, never mind, I changed my mind. I'm like, and then that's when it became real. But, it just goes to show, when you're good to other people, no matter what, even when you don't have intent as to what am I going to get out of this, like you really could help someone else get started on their path. And I'm so thankful that, he was so patient with me. I was, Kelsey wasn't able to make it that week. And I remember I was like a one-man band, so I'm stressing out. Like I'm doing the interview, recording, making sure it looks good. And he was just so patient with me. And I still tell Kelsey to this day, I'm like, what if I would have gotten there and, he would have been a complete jerk? I would have been like, you know what, forget this whole documentary thing. It was stupid, but because of that, you get started with good momentum and it gives your confidence grows and it starts to say, well, why can't I email George R. R. Martin and see if he's available? And things that are ridiculous and you never expect it to work out. But fortunately, when people help, show you that you're on the right path, it helps open more doors. And then we got the invite to come back here and speak, which we were incredibly honored and shocked by.
Yes, thank you. Honestly, Dr. Atkinson, we can really thank him for this whole journey because without that first step, we really don't know where we'd be. So thank you guys for having us.
Oh, warm fuzzies. Awesome. Just to let y'all know, I had no idea that was actually kind of the story. I got the email and it was, how exciting, somebody's actually interested in my work. And I just kind of thought that, y'all had been doing this for a while and all this kind of stuff. And I really had no idea that it was kind of the first steps that y'all were taking. And to know that, I played some role in kind of helping y'all get your feet on the ground, that means the world to me because it's not just kind of what y'all are doing, but it's a documentary. I mean, y'all get the word out and you're helping to educate people. Whoops. You're helping to educate people and it's just, I guess it's an honor love fest back and forth because, when I say things like you guys are my heroes, that you've inspired me to realize that my work is not just something that people might kind of find silly or unimportant, that it actually matters and people are actually passionate about it. So I really do appreciate y'all too. Long distance hugs. So y'all been doing this for a while. That was a couple of years ago. Okay, so y'all been doing this for a while. What have been some of your most memorable and rewarding experiences working on these projects?
We were talking about just how many there are, and it really is crazy. I would say just the amount of people that are, I'm kind of stealing your, what you had anticipated saying, but it's true. Everyone was just so nice to us. People that, could have easily, I don't have time for that, and understandably so. Everyone has a lot going on, let alone some of the people we were asking to, take the time out to speak with us. But it was really amazing. Not only that they took the time to speak to us, but we're genuinely had gratitude, and we're thank you for doing something like this and showing, that there is more to comic books than just this geek culture. Because this stuff is important to people and there's, a reason behind that. It strikes a chord, whether it's Star Trek, Star Wars. It could be, we were talking earlier today about mobster movie. Everyone has their own niche and something that they're into. And I think it's important to kind of ask well, why does that resonate with me? What is it that I see in myself? How can I help that in my, use that to help me in my own journey? That's really been the biggest takeaway from me is not only how nice everyone is, but how many people got to where they are just by following their own passions. I mean, we've talked to a lot of people know like Stan Lee's story of he wanted to quit comics in the early 60s because he was sick of being told what to do and was like, I don't think these ideas will work. And his wife was the one that said, you know what, do one comic book the way you want to do and then quit. The worst that happens is they fire you. And he ended up doing the Fantastic Four, which obviously became a success. And at that point, they started to trust him more and say, why don't you do kind of more books like that? And that's what allowed him to go on his way. And like knowing that story going in, I'm like, that's such a great story. But I had no idea how many other people's like story is exactly the same. We interviewed Kevin Eastman, who created the Ninja Turtles. And I mean, he had no expectations of this ever being anything. He was like, it was me and my friend literally talking about this would be a fun/stupid thing to do. We'd have a good time doing it. Let's just do it to get it out of our systems. And we'll do one issue. We won't borrow money from people, so we don't have to feel bad when it doesn't make a dime. We don't want any investors. We'll just use our own money. And I mean, to show how little expectations I had, they killed off Shredder in the first issue because they thought this is it. Like, we'll do our one issue and that'll be it. And then all of a sudden the sales came in. They're like, you should do another one. And you just see, I mean, that's still an ongoing show still today. And I mean, I can't even think of how many people told that we were talking to. And we said, how'd you get started? They were like, really, I had a dumb idea that I felt passionate about. And everyone said, well, just do it just so it, you know, you get out of your system and you stop talking about it. And then that ended up being what they still do to this day.
Yeah, I would definitely say, you know, all of our experiences have been memorable, and they've most definitely been rewarding. I think the most memorable is not only are we meeting these legends, you know, not only just in the comic world, but I mean, they are household names. Everyone knows them. Even if you haven't read a comic book, you haven't seen one of their movies, you've heard about them. And just the fact that it was so humbling, and it was so just incredible to get the reception that we were able to. I mean, who are we, right? Like, we are just really random people. Like, we could have been anybody, like crazy people coming to interview Stan Lee or Kevin Eastman or George R.R. Martin. And just the fact that they, you know, they recognized and they remembered that they started somewhere too. And it's really been because of those opportunities and people believing in us and really believing in this idea that we had that we didn't even really know. We just kind of happened upon this, and we kind of struck, you know, oil with this, and it's just been so incredible. But I would say one of the most rewarding experiences is there was a gentleman, it was at actually Stan Lee's Comic-Con in LA. We were going around just talking to different people. You know, we had already been on this journey of like, you know, we want to talk to people about deeper issues. So, you know, we were hitting on race, we were hitting on religion, we were hitting on personal issues, you know, like he mentioned with Anakin earlier. And there's this man who was dressed as Wonder Woman, and you know, a little bit more skimpily than what
very scantily
dressed Wonder Woman. He was kind of standing by himself, like looking around. He kind of looked like he might have been a little introverted. And I was like, why don't we go up and talk to him? And so we told him about what Superhero Faces is about. We spoke with him. He was a man from the Philippines who grew up there gay, and you know, he just was like, I didn't see anyone in the media who even looked like me, let alone who represented me as a person and my values. And he came upon Wonder Woman, Linda Carter's Wonder Woman, and he was like, I resonate with her and I see myself in her. It went beyond gender, it went beyond race, it went beyond everything, and he's connected to her character on a much deeper level. And that was just one of the most memorable interviews that we've had. And one of the best things about most of these interviews, and especially that one, was after the fact is usually when we have even greater conversations about it. And he was just like, thank you. Like, after that, like, you kind of saw him like blossom into this confident person, like while we're talking to him. And afterward, he was like, I was so scared to be here. And he's like, but if I can't be myself here, if this isn't a safe place for me, then where can I be? And he's like, thank you for telling my story. And thank you for letting me know that it's okay to be who I am. So that's probably one of the most rewarding and memorable experiences that I had personally.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fine line because, like, I'm very apprehensive about going up to people because unfortunately, there are a lot of people right now that want to get a camera in your face in hopes that you say something stupid or you stumble over yourself and you look like an idiot. So everyone has every right to be like apprehensive or hesitant when we walk up, like, you know, to a male dressed as a female superhero and be like, can we interview? Like, he has no idea. What are they gonna ask me? Are they gonna set me up to look dumb? Or they, you know, so like, I'll never forget, like after we were rolling, he thanked us and said, thank you for making me feel like included. And you realize like how much of this is just inclusion. And, you know, as much as you might be apprehensive that speak to someone normally because you're so worried about singling them out, sometimes that's just making them feel part of, you know, the crowd. Like, how would he have felt if he sees us going around and talking to all these other people and we just ignore him? You know, and he's, okay, well, what is it about me? Is there something wrong with me that they wouldn't want to talk to me? It just shows you, like, you know, just that's all everyone's looking for, is to feel a part of something. And,
yeah, representation definitely matters in all mediums.
And the most memorable thing, though, is probably the George R. R. Martin story. Is like one of the craziest stories. And the reason why is the worst looking interview we have, like in the whole documentary, is, and I always want to explain it to people because, so, like, you know, like I was saying earlier, when, you know, we spoke to Dr. Atkinson, who was so great, and, like, you start to just get this, like, oh, okay, this is going well. And I remember one of the dumbest things I ever did, but it paid off, was, like, looking on George R. R. Martin's website and be like, I wonder if he has any appearances coming up. Maybe he'll let us interview him. And it was the weirdest thing in the world. He had 2 appearances scheduled for the entire year. One was in London, and one was in Tucson, Arizona, which is, like, a super small city in Arizona. I mean, it's not even Phoenix. I'm like, so his 2 appearances within a year of London and Tucson, I'm like, okay, but at least at this point, like, he's close enough to us. It's a 2-hour drive. Let's reach out to the convention people and see, you know, if this can work. And they emailed us back and said, email us the questions. We'll email them to his people and see if this is something he's interested in doing. So the convention people emailed back and said, yeah, he's happy to speak with you. Come down and we'll see what we can set up. So still at that point, I'm like, are we really?
This is not real.
Yeah,
Like,
we're gonna
okay.
drive down there. It's gonna be a packed convention. We're not gonna even be able to go up to the stage. Hi, we're the people who emailed you. Can we speak to you? Or like, so, you know, everyone's crowding George R. R. Martin after the con, and we go up and speak to the presenter. Like, hey, we're the ones who emailed. We don't even know if this is the person we've been corresponding with. We're like, you know, we emailed about speaking with George for our documentary, and he said, yeah, let me call him over. So he's George. He goes, these are the 2 people who sent in their questions. And I'll never forget, it was the craziest thing. He goes, what time is it? And we go, 1 o'clock. He goes, I have a panel at 2. If you could be in room 223 at 1:30, I'm happy to do it. And then like walked off. And then like, it seriously took like a few seconds of resonance. I'm like, did he just give us his hotel room number to like just go up there and interview him? Like, he doesn't know us. And then like, we ended up we couldn't find his room because the hotel was under construction. So it had like a part of it closed off. And I remember us running, we're dripping in sweat. We're like, every minute we lose with him, we're only gonna get like 4 questions. Now we're down to 3 questions. Now we might be down to 2. So we're like racing like crazy. And finally we get to the room. We just set up like 1 light and we're like, let's just get what we can get. And fortunately paid off, but I always wanna like justify why his like looks less professional. But I'm like, there's also a really good story behind it of just that whole scene of going down.
At least he was comfortable. Yeah, at least he was comfortable.
Yeah, he was like lounging there, and it was like you know, like not a night, like it was just a regular hotel in Tucson where like we're just hanging out with George R. R. Martin. Like it was like the weirdest thing, and like no one have I ever wanted to like geek out more about and be like, so you got to tell me how these books end. But I'm like, you know what? I'm not gonna be that guy. I'm gonna just pretend I'm here professionally and not like ask him like questions that I just want to know. So
that's tough. That's tough,
oh,
especially when you're getting to meet your idols and people that you know have greatly inspired you. Because those are very personal, meaningful moments for us to meet people who have inspired us to do better things with our lives. So that's actually a pretty good segue to the next question. What do y'all hope to ultimately accomplish through your work?
I mean, really, my main goal is to kind of remind people. I mean, we get bogged down with like whatever excuses we might come up with of why we don't do the things we want to do in life, and it's so easy to find excuses. But to kind of say like the reason we attracted these stories is these are people who overcome not excuses but obstacles in the forms of dragons, and obviously like in fantasy and fiction, they have to exaggerate everything and make it more, you know, grandiose than it is in our real world, because otherwise why would we watch it and pay attention to it? But we can see the parallels between these stories and say like, okay, well, I don't have a dragon, but I might have a supervisor at work that's kind of a pain. Or I might have this, you know, paper coming up. Like, how can I slay that dragon? How can I overcome this obstacle? And we start to pick and choose, and when we grab it, like it really empowers us when we do that. Like a nervous wreck heading up here to speak to all of you. And we were lucky enough to sit in a panel before here about public speaking. And the speaker was talking about like, just make that your superpower. And I'm like, yeah, that's what I'll do. I'll be like, Captain America up there, and I'm like combating villains is really what's going on by conquering my fear. But those little things and making those connections really help empower you and help you get through challenges that you might not otherwise.
Yeah, and I think just along those lines is really, we've kind of already accomplished what we want to do. Obviously we have all these greater goals, but really what we want is just to create understanding, to help people. And if even one person is touched in an article that we write, in a video that we do, or even today, it's such a success. We really went on this journey with no expectations, and it's turned into something so much greater than us. And we are just so fortunate and so lucky to be able to have a platform to hopefully create some change in a positive way. So, no matter what happens in the future with either our documentary or our website, or if we never get to speak to people again like this, I would consider us a success in that manner.
Yeah, that's something that we try to communicate to our students too, is that, you can't always predict or understand how far your actions are going to spread. And you don't always necessarily see in the short term the benefits of the good work that you do. And I think it's really important to give everybody some support and some encouragement that even if you don't necessarily see the immediate benefits of what you're doing, really maybe the most important thing is just putting good intention out there. And this is something that actually we've been talking over is I think we've had very similar experiences of, you might not necessarily feel or see that it's working, but if you keep doing it for long enough, what you'll see is that you definitely start getting feedback from people. I get emails from students all the time that, honestly, it might even be kind of hard for me to remember having them in my classes and things, but like, hey, Dr. A, you helped in some way. And, so I think one of the most inspiring things about your work is that because you're willing to put yourself out there, nothing ventured, nothing gained, you're actually beginning to see firsthand that your work is actually making a difference in people's lives, and that can continue to inspire you to keep going with what you're doing. What's the most important lesson you've learned from the process of creating your own projects?
I wouldn't say as much. I don't learn as much from the creating the project as much as I learn through the these people that Kelsey speaks with is what really is inspiring, and the fact that she is so passionate about giving people. We both now work at the Arizona Humane Society together, and I know that's one of her big things is we help. These animals can't speak for themselves or say what their past is. So I have the ability now to go on television and speak about why this pet should be adopted and how loving they are and where they came from. And I think that's just a great attribute Kelsey has is that passion to make people feel comfortable enough to talk to her about their story. And, like I said, there are a lot of people did open up in ways, I'm trying to think, you interviewed the cosplayers so much. You remember any other specific stories of, we spoke to people of, gender bending and the race bending and people that are dressed up as, a character of one ethnicity, but they're another one. We interviewed an Asian girl dressed as Miss Marvel, who's a Muslim superhero. And her talking about, I like her, and her story resonates with mine, despite the fact that we come from different backgrounds. And just those people just inspire me to have the courage to be I wanted to do this, so I just did it. And I think that's my biggest takeaway is just learning how much we're nervous about things that we really don't need to be nervous about, and how the rewards outweigh the fact that we might talk ourselves out of something because we'll look
self-doubt.
Stupid.
Yeah, that's exactly it. So I was going to say, I think the biggest lesson I've taken away is just removing that self-doubt. Every single challenge or hurdle that we have faced, it's been internally, it's been us being okay, well, say we drive all the way down to Tucson and George R. R. Martin just totally just doesn't even talk to us, thinks we're crazy or whatever, but that was something that we projected on ourselves, and we've been doing a really great job since the beginning. We literally have dove headfirst into this since the beginning, and it's just really removing that self-doubt, because honestly, it's so cliche, but it's so true. Your parents have probably told you that you are your biggest supporter, but you can also be your biggest enemy as well. So I think it's just kind of getting past the what ifs and what if it doesn't happen, and just being like, why not? Like, why can't this happen to me? Everyone has to start somewhere. We did. And we're still on this journey, and it's never going to stop, and your journey's never going to stop. And you just have to always believe in your purpose, and it's okay if your purpose changes. It's okay if your journey changes, if it takes a different path. Like, that is okay, because ours definitely has, and it might tomorrow, and you just have to be open to it. You have to believe in yourself and really just find your passion. Find something that you really care about, because if you don't care about it, you're not going to motivate yourself, and no one else is going to do it for you. No one else is going to help you if you don't want to help yourself. And really just trusting the process, trusting yourself, and trusting other people. You know, there's been so many times where we literally just had to trust someone. We just had to show up at a time, believe that someone was going to help us, and it's worked out, and we are just so thankful and just can't really believe that we're here today.
I'm glad you are here. Y'all, I mean, we're friends, you know, and that's something that I was really excited about, you know, getting to hang out with y'all. But, you know, it was also, I'm just so proud of the work that y'all are doing. And y'all need, you know, I know you're doing things through media, but I think it's so important to get your message out there, because you're doing what we hope our students do, which is, you know, y'all might be a little bit further along the path, but you're taking your dreams and you're making them a reality, and that's a very terrifying thing to do, to put yourself out there like that. And Kelsey, you mentioned some challenges. You know, what kind of challenges have y'all faced, other than the kind of ones that you've already mentioned, and what kind of lessons have y'all learned about not letting life kind of beat you down and not being discouraged in the face of trying to accomplish your objectives?
I mean, we've been really, we have not had, and I've said from the beginning, I'm like, hey, we're gonna have that one moment where the ground is just crumbling beneath us. I'm like, you know, because I mean, we flew to Los Angeles to speak to Stanley. Like, if he bails on us, which, you know, who knows? Like, he has every right to say, you know what, I'm just not feeling up for it today. You know, so we've been doing this out of our own pocket. So, you know, I keep saying we're gonna have that one really hardship moment where wow, this sucks. We flew out to LA on our own dime, didn't end up getting anything, and now we're flying back. But we've been really fortunate to not have any of those. I mean, I keep thinking, I'm like, this is gonna be it. This trip is when I'm gonna fall on stage and something terrible is gonna happen, and you know, now it all catches up to us. But we've been, I mean, the worst case scenario, you get a no in an email of, and not even rude, but just someone that's like, oh, I don't think I'd have the time to speak to you. But I mean, honestly, one of the keys I found is to wear each of those no's as a badge of honor. Every time someone tells you no, it means you're trying to do something. If no one's ever telling you yes or no, that means you're not trying anything different. So anytime someone tells me no to something, I'm like, well, you know what? At least I took a second to try something outside the box.
Yeah, and I think, maybe we haven't faced those kind of challenges, but we have, you know, no one's perfect, and we have our own challenges as well. You know, it's a challenge sometimes when you're working full time, or, you know, when you're just laid off, or when you just quit, or if something really terrible happens in your life, if you lose someone. You know, we've gone through all of these personal challenges, and it has been hard at times to be like, okay, well, we have XYZ to do in this side of life, but we also have superhero faces that we have to think about, and we need to keep plugging away, and we really need to keep pursuing our dream. So in that way, you know, that's why I say, you need to do something that you're passionate about and that you actually really care about and you believe in, because it's a challenge. You know, every day you're going to have obstacles that are going to try to get in your way, and they're going to try to deflect you. And it's really easy to get caught up in those. And you know, for us, it's really just been believing in our whole journey. You know, I keep on saying this journey, but it really has been. And it's just really not getting in our own way. I think that's been the biggest challenge. You know, we've been working really great as a team, because if there's one day that I'm like, okay, well, what if this happens and I'm playing the devil's advocate, you know, then Brad is really good at stepping up and being like, okay, well, we just need to do this. We need to try. If we don't try, we're never going to know. And, you know, there will be another day where oh, I don't know about this, or I'm not sure about this person, you know, and we just have really balanced each other out. So I think the biggest challenge that we've overcome is just ourselves, and just making sure that we continue to remind ourselves why we're doing this, and that it is important, and that what we need to do is just keep on plugging along, because if we don't do it, no one else is going to do it. And you know, in the beginning, some people didn't really understand. You know, a lot of our friends, they like comics and they like superheroes and they like the entertainment factor, but they're really okay, you're
Not
gonna.
that much.
Yeah, they're not that much, and they're like, okay, but like, what is this gonna do? Like, so are you gonna be like IMG or like IGN? Sorry, IMG is the financial. IGN. So it's like, it's like no, like we have our own thing. So it's like really getting past the challenge of like, we know what path we need to be on, and we know what we want to accomplish, and like no matter what other people say, and no matter what we say to ourselves internally, like just getting past that. And I think this is a good testament to just doing that.
One of the best things I ever read was it talked about the difference between if you see something and you can't afford it, you have two ways to look at it. You can say, I can't afford it, or you can ask yourself, how can I afford it? And like ever since I've read that, I've just realized like how much that applies to just in general. Like we can be, like you said, our own worst enemy and just so self-defeating and be like, oh, I can't have that. But rather than say I can't, say, well, how might I be able to do it? Is it giving this up out of my schedule or giving this, monthly costs that I have up? And, like Kelsey hosts a show in Arizona. She hosts a television show that films on Thursdays. And she would have every excuse to be like, oh, Wednesday's tough. I have so much, extra prep work to do. But instead she figured out like, okay, well I can, work a little more Monday and Tuesday and take that on. So it's just a difference of like thinking outside the box and saying like, okay, well, how can I make that work? Rather than just saying, that's too tough. You're gonna have to get creative. You're gonna have to figure things out and move some stuff around. It's not gonna come easy, but it just that shift in your mind state just makes such a big difference, and it's been really helpful for me.
So Kelsey, you kind of briefly mentioned that it's not just kind of the self-doubt, but maybe what other people are saying. And I think that's something that, I've definitely faced that in my career, and maybe many people in this room have faced, people who are doubting your abilities or maybe even vocalizing that to you. Have y'all had experiences like that? And if so, how do you deal when somebody doubts your ability to get done what you're trying to get done or says discouraging things to you?
I think you really just take it with a grain of salt. There's a difference between criticism and there's a difference between constructive criticism. And really the only thing that matters are the people who are in your corner, because you're really going to find that out really quickly. And it's really important for you to be able to know like who you can depend on and who can depend on you when the time comes. There's been, when we first started, we both had full-time jobs for a professional sports team. And, we were doing this on the side, and, we had supervisors or managers or, people just that were peers who didn't really understand and who were almost mocking us in a way, but like really you just have to believe. You just have to trust. You just have to know like what you're doing is so much beyond versus what someone thinks in the moment. Like you're going to remember doing something because you wanted to do it versus not doing something because like, someone said like, oh, like you shouldn't do that, or oh, like that's not really like something that you can make a career or whatever. Mm-hmm. Like, you really have to just forge your own way. And that's really been for us, like, just being able to do this is because we've been able to motivate ourselves and we've been able to surround ourselves with people who have been very supportive.
Yeah, thank goodness you have each other to kind of support.
Kelsey said earlier, like you have to love what you're doing. Like no one else is gonna love it for you. Like it has to be important for you and to start with you, because you're the person at the end of every day that's gonna continue to believe in yourself. Like you're the one person that's a guarantee to constantly push yourself, and you can't. Like it's so much work to that goes into like editing this documentary has been so much work. But like thankfully I didn't choose a topic that I'm like, well, this will sell big, so I'm gonna choose this. And then like come the 30th time in a row watching it, I'm like, oh, this is so boring. Why do I have to keep like exposing myself to this? Fortunately, I chose something that I continue to like and continue to enjoy, that it hasn't like worn off on me.
Yeah, Joseph Campbell said, follow your bliss. And I think that's a wonderful aphorism for us to consider that, I'm all for like making money and doing what you have to do to survive. But at the same time, do you feel like what you're doing is actually meaningful? Does it give you purpose? Does it give you a sense of satisfaction above and beyond just collecting a paycheck from week to week? One other question for you. What advice would you have to our students, for our students to help them unlock their own superheroic potential?
Man, I think we've really touched on it throughout this whole thing, but it's really just not being afraid. It's surrounding yourself with people who believe in you, who truly are there to support you no matter what. and really just finding your passion. Like we mentioned before, it's okay to change, especially at this time of your life. I was raised by my grandmother, who was a teacher, and she was very rigid in like expectations, so we get caught up, especially with societal standards and things, like get caught up by this age I need to do this, or I just graduated high school, I have to go to college, or I have to do something. Like, it's really finding your path, and it's really finding what is going to give you purpose and keep you waking up and happy when you every time that you rise. I would really just say finding that and being okay if you haven't found that yet. There's so many people who go throughout their lives who change careers, who change anything. They change, they can move into a small house, or they cannot have a house, or they go to country. And that's okay. Everyone's path is different. Do not compare yourself to anyone else. Don't compare yourself to us. Just take those little lessons and hopefully be able to apply them in the way that works best for you and works best for your own particular journey.
Yeah, especially like looking into all the parallels that I've researched about why these stories are all similar. I mean, all of our journeys are similar, but no two are the same. So never feel like expectation of, so many people just put it on themselves of, well, now I'm this age, that means I have to be at this point in my life. Like, that is not the case for 100% of people. That's not even the case for like most people, but it's what we see and it's what we kind of attach to as being like the norm. And then we just put so much pressure on ourselves and, ourselves, like, now I have to do this. Now I'm at this stage. It's like different people take different winding roads. So like never feel, and especially now with social media, it makes it so much tougher because you see the highlights of everyone else. You see like the best of, a lot of people don't post the struggles that go into, graduating or achieving their dreams. You don't post the daily struggles, you post the highlights. So I think it's easy to put a lot of pressure on ourselves and say like, oh, I'm not doing all these great things. But it's like, you have 200 Facebook friends. Obviously, someone's going to be doing something awesome every day. It doesn't mean that they're doing something awesome every day. So just be patient. Don't compare yourselves to others and just go your own way.
And I think along that is, you have to believe in yourself and like have, this, finding of yourself, but don't be afraid to reach out for help. We literally could not be here today if we had not reached out to other people and if we didn't have a team. It truly, no one can do anything on their own. And if you do, it's a lot harder. It's going to take a lot more time. It's been something that I've personally had to work with throughout my life, just being able to open yourself up and being able to have that trust in others that, they want to help you, because if you don't even give them the opportunity, they don't even know that you need help. And you never know how someone can help you out in the future, and just being open to those opportunities as well.
So to kind of start summing things up today, y'all have another clip that y'all would like to show. Do you want to make any comments about the clip?
Yeah, so this is where, we wanted to, make this worth everyone coming there, see, like, we've just been so much pressure of like, we got to make sure like this is worth it for everyone. Everyone takes it, like, I go to these panels all the time, so like I just felt like being on the other end of it is kind of like, okay, what can I do? I was like, let's show something from the film. So it's super rough. You'll know, like, there hasn't been like color correction or music added, but we wanted something to just share to thank everyone for coming out. So this is actually a little segment featuring Dr. Atkinson and, what I filmed the last time I was out here when I interviewed him for our first interview for the film. So we just, pieced together a little bit, some of that footage along with, he had the opportunity to meet Stan Lee in Los Angeles, and I got to kind of be a fly on the wall and kind of, film that interaction. So I've incorporated some of that in here. So hopefully you guys like it, and, keep in mind we still got a lot of work to do on it, but it shows that we're getting there.
Peter Parker.
That's the one.
He was a bright kid, but he got made fun of for that, so he got picked on a lot. He was bad with girls. He was socially awkward. Like, he was all the things that most regular people have to experience.
For the first time, you kind of take this notion of the sidekick and flip it on its head. And instead of the 15-year-old being the Bucky to Captain America, he's actually the major protagonist and the main character of a superhero story.
Now, Superman came from Krypton. Batman was, the wealthiest guy in Gotham City. Peter Parker, when Spider-Man came along, that was the closest thing to my existence.
In the Spider-Man's original storyline, he was very put upon, he was insulted, he was definitely talked down to by other people. And because of that, when he gets his powers, his first instinct is not to become a hero or to use his powers for good, his first instinct is to use his powers selfishly to earn money.
You know how ahead of its time that was? That a superhero would want to make money, but that builds in the irony when, of course, he doesn't use his superpowers to save his Uncle Ben, and that makes him realize he's got to use his powers for good.
Have you noticed you get a lot of these in criminal justice classes? We're always putting y'all in somebody else's shoes. Here's a scenario, here's a scenario. Well, the reason why is we are trying to get y'all to anticipate what it might be like in the real world to deal with very complex moral situations. If you have not given any thought to what you would do in a situation like that, you're probably going to be somewhat caught off guard when that situation actually happens. Does that make sense? I had a professor who gave us an assignment in a law class. We had to relate some aspect of the real world to the law. And so I was like, oh, I'll just do this on comic books. And this professor, instead of saying that's ridiculous and don't do that, he was incredibly supportive. There's a paradox going on here that you have a person who is, for all intents and purposes, looks like they're upholding the law and trying to protect people, which is a good thing, right? But while they're upholding the law, because they're acting outside of the law, they're breaking the law while they're upholding the law. In some way, shape, or form, most of our students either go into some form of law enforcement, probation, parole, they go to law school. Bottom line is, you're working in some way, shape, or form through the criminal justice system or social welfare agencies to help people in need. Superheroes in general, and Spider-Man in particular, if you look at this whole metaphor of power and responsibility, what is a better way to start the discussion of how we should define what the powers of the criminal justice system are? The reality is that the legal system does not always protect us the way that it should. And criminal justice professionals do not always act with the best discretion or the right amount of good moral decision making. And so I think for opening up a discussion to try to create critical thinking skills within students, it might be helpful to use an example like Spider-Man to talk about vigilantism in general, to talk about the limits of how the law can protect us, and if the law can't protect us, what are the consequences for that? And one of the great things about comic books is it allows us to do that in a relatively safe forum through a fictional character that is very metaphorical. And so we can have these very real discussions about very real things without offending people or without getting into territory where we're directly criticizing the criminal justice system or we're directly criticizing the media or what have you.
Hey, have a seat.
Yes,
how are you?
Finally meet you, yeah.
He said, Doctor?
Dr. Kerry Atkinson, yes, sir. I'm a criminal justice professor.
No kidding. These people want to be law enforcement officers?
Many of them, correctional officers.
Do they want to be like district attorneys and judges?
Across the board.
Is that so? That must be fascinating for you to do that. Wow.
Yeah.
College professors have a lot of influence. They mold the minds of the citizenry.
Power and responsibility. I try to keep, every time I walk into a classroom, I try to keep in mind that these are minds that are developing, and I have to be very careful with that and to teach them critical.
You're damn right. Yeah, that's so true.
So, yeah.
I never thought comic books would have reached the point where people with any intelligence also discuss them. When I got into the field, parents hated their children reading comics. People wrote articles against comics. It was terrible. Now all of a sudden everything has changed because of people like you.
I'm trying to do my best. I always tell people that, aside from my parents who were wonderful people, Spider-Man and Marvel Comics shaped my moral viewpoints and my desire to help people as much as my parents did. So
that is so good to hear. Yeah, thank you. That's very nice.
I'm not the only one.
Now I expect results from you because you look like the kind of guy who gets things done.
We're not just talking about comic books in this class, we're talking about the meaning of what it means to sacrifice and to try to find your own heroic journey. And that's something that I think not just every criminal justice student, but really every good-hearted person kind of has to come to terms with in their lives is, why am I here? What's my purpose? What good can I do in the world? Can I leave the world a better place?
If all the teachers are like you, I imagine the students are learning very well and enjoying it while they're learning.
Good job.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Aw. Yay. Just to let y'all know, I didn't know Brad and Kelsey were going to do that until they sent the clip, and I was like, oh, thank y'all so much. To me, like y'all, for real, that's a bucket list item for me. Somebody that's inspired me like that, and I never in a million years dreamed I'd actually have the chance to meet Stan Lee in person, and not just meet him for like an autograph, but to have a conversation with him and to tell him how much I appreciated his inspirational work. And really, that's one of the lessons that I really hope gets across to everybody here, is that if you are doing good work, if you are dedicating yourself to helping other people and just putting those good vibes out there, you might not in a million years ever predict the wonderful things that will come back to you, the wonderful opportunities that will come back to you. And it all started, and I'm humbly so thankful for both of you. It all started because Brad was willing to reach out to me and thought my work was meaningful and important. And because of that, this meeting Stan Lee opportunity, the opportunity to bring you guys to our campus for UCD to see what we're doing here. Don't underestimate the power you have to make a difference in the world simply when you're trying to do the right thing. And I think that's one of the messages that, for whatever reason, our culture just does not send us that message clearly enough, that if you continue to do what's right, eventually you're not necessarily going to, have all of your dreams come true, but you will definitely see that you've made a powerful, positive difference in the world. And I think that's something that should inspire us all. We thank y'all for coming today. I would like to give one last thank you to Jerry Nichols, who has been so awesome behind the scenes. Thank you, Jerry.